Anyone who has used AI before has been disappointed with the outputs that they've gotten from the machine. Sometimes when I put a request into the machine, I get exactly what I want and I can easily copy and paste what the AI gives me and put it directly into my lesson plan. Other times I get such a garbled mess, it would take me more time and energy to untangle what the machine has given me than just do the task myself. If you also have this problem with AI, don't worry, you are not alone. A lot of people have this problem, but there are techniques and strategies that we can use to more effectively talk to the machine and get what we want. This course is designed both for beginners and intermediate users of AI to teach them the most effective way to talk to these machines. I want to reassure you, even if this is your first time playing with AI, you are not behind. This is the perfect time to integrate this technology into your classroom practice, and I'm going to help you get started. Now, we're going to first start with a quick review of what AI is, because that's going to influence how we use it and the most effective ways to use it. Large language models like ChatGPT function like graphing calculators for written word. They basically use a lot of complex math to guess which word should come next in the series of words that it's providing. However, large language models don't understand the connotation of the words that they're reading. They only understand the input and output and the math that they used in order to guess what you wanted to see next. So what does this mean for the way that we talk to these machines? Well, if we know that large language models are basically just trying to guess which word comes next in the sequence, then we know that when they fail, it's because they don't have the context necessary to make the right guess. So we need to make sure that large language models have the context necessary to do the tasks that we're asking them to do, and we need to make sure that we're not shy about redirecting the model and explaining when and why it's wrong. If the large language model guesses incorrectly, we need to think about that of like, hitting the wrong buttons on a graphing calculator. We get the error response and we need to go back and provide more information in the equation. This redirecting of the AI, the large language model, is what we call prompt engineering. Prompt engineering sounds really technical, but all that we're talking about is the most effective way to talk to the machines. If you're a good communicator and you're willing to give people honest feedback, you're going to find it very easy and intuitive to talk to these machines. I honestly believe that teachers have a leg up when it comes to using these technologies because of the soft skills that it takes to be an educator. There's a lot of great frameworks when it comes to prompt engineering, but today we're just going to start with literally the simplest framework I could come up with, which is every request that you make of the AI should include two things. One, what is the task that you are asking the model to take on? And then two, how do you want it to take on that task? If we can be really clear with those two things, we can increase the chances that we're going to get an effective output that we can use from the AI model. Let's start with number one, the task. The first thing I'm going to want to do is consider if the AI model is capable of taking on the task that I'm asking it to do. Does it have the context and data necessary in order to answer my question? For example, an AI model isn't going to be very good at answering the question, why am I sad today? It might help me brainstorm some ideas, but it doesn't know anything about my day, and it doesn't actually know anything about me. However, AI would be able to provide me a great summary of ancient Chinese history because it's likely been trained on history as a part of its data set. When considering the task that you're asking of the AI model, ask yourself, is this model capable of following out this task? And does it have the context necessary in order to complete that task to the level that I'm looking? Let's jump into a couple of quick examples of tasks that large language models are excellent at. All right, let's take a look at my output. First, you can see that I gave it a list of my books in my class and asked it to organize these books alphabetically. It has all the information because I gave it all the book titles and even goes out and finds more information for me. Now, this is helpful, but as I think about it, on my syllabus, I'd actually love to organize them by the year they were created or released, and you can see the AI very easily reorganizes this information. Again, it already has all the context to complete this request, so it's very easy for it to just organize information for me. All right, now I'm going to ask it to write me a list of algebraic equations that increase in difficulty. Algebraic equations are the same everywhere, and so ChatGPT obviously has information on this. You can see that after question 7, things start to get really complicated, where we get into systems of linear equations and non-linear systems of equations. And so I say, hey, look, after question 7, everything is too complicated. Can you just keep this in that difficulty range of 1 to 7 and give me 15 questions? And very quickly, I have a usable output. All right, let's also take a look here at this example I mentioned earlier. I just say, teach me about ancient Chinese history, and you can see that ChatGPT has access to lots of information bases, and so it's easily going to put together a succinct summary for me that's going to act as an introduction to this topic. I can assume that the AI model has been trained on information surrounding these topics. While it probably hasn't been trained on things like financial law or how to fix my car or medical practice yet, I can assume that it has a lot of general knowledge, like an encyclopedia. If I think that the AI model lacks the context in order to complete my task, I can always provide it with a little bit more context in order to help it out. So once you've decided that the AI model that you have is the right model for the job and that it's going to be able to complete it, the second thing you want to think about is how you want it to complete that output. What do you want the AI output to look like? Again, while there are a lot of great frameworks for prompting, I decided to stick with the most simple for this example. We'll get more complicated later. The simplest thing I can think of is, who is your audience? What do you want to see in the final product? And what do you not want to see in the final product? Let's go back and look at one of my examples and see how the output changes when we give it a little bit more information on how we want it to complete these tasks. Let's go back to my earlier example of ancient Chinese history. The output that I've gotten here is intelligent, but it's not necessarily super helpful to me in the moment. I'm going to ask it to summarize this in 3 paragraphs and try to focus more on the major themes and omit some of the information around prehistoric China and the things that happened after the Song dynasty. Again, this is for my students and I want it to be helpful to them. The output that I get here is great. It's very detailed, it hits on major themes here, and it's focused on the correct information, but it's not good for my audience. So I'm going to say, hey, remember that this is for 9th graders, and let's go ahead and drop off some of the less important information and focus on less. The AI takes some time to rewrite this, and I get a much more usable output. This is the kind of thing I would absolutely use at the beginning of a unit, but before the AI is even finished writing this summary, I have it writing something for my students who struggle with learning disabilities. I ask it to write something at a 5th grade level and take advantage of bullet points in order to make the information easier to process. This is going to be great for my students who have IEPs, and this is also going to be super helpful to my co-teacher who might not have the time to internalize all this information. Okay, now it's your turn. I've gone ahead and in activity 1 in the next section, I've started some prompts for you. I've picked some tasks that AI models are good at completing. I want you to go in there and customize the how so that the output is actually going to be helpful for you. Remember, explain to the model who your audience is, what you do want to see in the final product, and what you don't want to see in the final product. And if you're unsatisfied with the output, don't stay unsatisfied. Try it again. Reprompt it and tell it to do something different and see if you can get something useful. We'll explore some more structured frameworks of prompt engineering in our next video, but for activity 1 here, just play around with the idea of the task and how you want that task completed. Okay, great. I hope you enjoyed customizing those tasks and that you were able to get something useful out of the AI. If you spent more than a minute playing around with the AI and re-prompting it to give you a better output, I have great news for you, which is that you've already instinctively stumbled into the 2 types of prompting that we're going to discuss in this video. These 2 styles are mega prompting and iterative prompting. And while this may sound a little bit intimidating in their names, I promise you that you've already stumbled into these while you've played around with AI tools. Mega prompting basically just means that we're giving the AI model all of the information we can think of upfront in one big prompt. There's some really great frameworks you can use in order to think through what information the AI model might need. One of the models that I use asks a series of questions. The first question is, what is the task that you want the AI model to take on? This is very similar to what we talked about before. The second is, what role or assumption do you want the AI model to take on? Sometimes giving it a name for its position or explaining exactly what role you want it to take can be very helpful in narrowing the output. Next is, what methodology or approach do you want the AI model to take on? Proper nouns like collectivist knowledge theory are going to be really helpful here in narrowing down the sources that the AI model is pulling from. Who is the audience for the AI's output is going to influence the voice and the level of complexity that we see. And then what is the style and voice of the output here is going to help us determine, do we want to see a lot of bullet points? Do we want to see this written at a certain grade level? And then lastly, what are you not looking for in the output here? Again, getting ahead of mistakes that it might make and telling it where to limit its focus. While you don't have to answer all of these questions, I encourage you to answer some of them and to think through your request before you put it into the AI model. I also encourage you to play around with different frameworks and figure out which works best from you. You may pick up ideas by using different frameworks. I have a few frameworks that I've attached to this lesson that you should be able to access. The assumed benefit of mega prompting is that the chat has all of the information, and so it's not going to run down any pathways and hallucinate anything. Let's take a look at an example of a mega prompt and see how it works out for me. Before we jump into ChatGPT, let's take a look at my mega prompt. You can see for the task that I've asked it to make a unit plan, and I've given it a standard to focus its attention. I also tell it about my tie-in for modern tragedies, such as soap operas, telenovelas, because this is my favorite thing to tie into this unit. I give it the role that it's an expert ELA curriculum designer, and then I go on to the methodology, and I tell it I want to take a multidisciplinary approach, and I tell it that we're going to end in a Socratic seminar as a part of our assessment here. Giving it this kind of proper nouns gives it kind of places to focus its attention. I tell it the audience is that I am a teacher and that they will ultimately be presenting lessons to my 9th graders. And for the style, I tell it exactly what I want from the unit plan. To end things off, I tell it what I'm not looking for. When I drop this mega prompt into ChatGPT, it's going to give me a lot of useful information in just one immediate response here. I get the executive summary, I go ahead and get these activities. This is going to be a really helpful brainstorm for me as I sit down to write this unit. Then it starts to give me a unit breakdown, which is helpful, but I honestly forgot in my mega prompt to tell it how many weeks we would be in this unit. As a result, I'll have to go back and correct this later, but that's not that bad. And because I told it my goals of being an equitable teacher, it gives me some ideas for assessment strategies and for differentiation techniques that will address the needs of all students. Now that I have all of this information set up, I can pull from this unit plan and ask it to start outlining lessons. Let's start with the first lesson on day 1, and it starts to give me some of this information. What's great is I can go back and change things. I can even go back to that reading list and tell it that I needed to rewrite the reading list for a different number of weeks. Now we're going to take a look at me taking on a very similar task, but this time by taking a very iterative prompting approach. When I first start, I ask the machine to give me just all of the standards that might connect to Antigone. It gives me a huge list of standards here, but what I actually want is just 3 standards that are going to fit well with what we want to do here. I have it narrowed down to those 3, and as I review these, they're perfect for me. Now, to be clear, I do double check these online. The second thing that I do is I have it start to brainstorm activities that are focused on the historical significance of ancient Greek plays and how drama plays into the political society. It comes up with a lot of great ideas here that I'm excited about, but what I really want to start doing is organizing my 6-week reading schedule. 6 weeks is kind of a long time to read this play, but I'm excited to see what it gives me. It starts to actually take those activities that it brainstormed before and starts to actually integrate them into the reading schedule without me asking it for it to do it, or without me even thinking to have that come around. It incorporates some of these role plays and suggests good times in order to write character diaries. This is all helpful, but I need something a little bit more practical here in order to decide if this is a good reading schedule. So I ask it to take its output and convert it into an Excel spreadsheet. Well, it doesn't have dates here because I haven't provided that context here yet. It's going to give me some helpful information and let me zoom out. All right, now while this is helpful, I decide to use my favorite thing here, which is to ask the AI what it thinks we should work on next. Now, it's going to go ahead and organize some ideas here and start to build out some lesson plans and even maybe ask me some questions in order to fill in the pieces of context that it doesn't have. Again, this is one of my favorite ways to work with AI because it allows it to prompt me into new thinking. Now, the great part is I can always go deeper on any other subject I want, but right now what I'm going to do is have this chat chat actually take its understanding of what I want and produce a mega prompt. And so it understands how to write prompts for other AI models, and it's going to go ahead and write a large mega prompt. The great upside of this is that I can take this and I can hand this off to a colleague, and they can replicate this mega prompt in their own way. The great part about iterative prompting, though, is I can always switch from mega prompting to iterative prompting in order to start to get deeper into some of the ideas that have been revealed to me. These are the basics of iterative and mega prompting. As you start to play around with these AI tools more, you'll start to instinctively figure out which one is the right fit for the situation. Sometimes it's really helpful to sit down and to really think of a large prompt before you put it in. Other times it's super helpful to just fire off one sentence to the AI model and then start to narrow in what it is that you want. You can always switch back and forth between the two, and sometimes opening up a new chat and turning a iterative prompt into a mega prompt can be really helpful for your creative process. Don't forget that you can also have AI write AI. I very frequently am so lazy that I'll have an AI model write a mega prompt for me based off of a 2 to 3 sentence description of a task. I hope that your takeaway from this video is that with a little bit of practice and a little bit of time, you can master AI and not only save yourself time, but do interesting things that you've never done before and expand your teaching practice even more. AI can work as a co-pilot, as a consultant that you hand work off to, or even just as a more enhanced Google search. However you use AI, as long as it's saving you time and making you a better teacher, it's the right way. Before you leave today, take a look at activity 2 and play around with some of the challenges I've set out for you. See if you can write mega prompts or iterative prompts in order to answer these challenges and complete them. And then take a look at my answers and compare the examples that I have to how you chose to solve the problem to see what you're doing differently or maybe even better than I am. Thank you so much for the opportunity to learn with you today. I hope to learn some more with you in the future and hope that the information here today kicked off your AI journey and helps you become a better prompt engineer.